is Emil Guillermo. Emil, Amok to you. Oddly enough, the same initials as Eileen Gu, who is really, I would think right now, she is the talk of Asian America because of what she did. She went and instead of being an ABC, American born Chinese, Ailing Gu, which is her Chinese name, or Gu Ailing, Eileen Gu has added the T to ABC. She's ABCT, American born Chinese team. American born Chinese team. Does that make sense? I mean, honestly, it really should be, if it's not the talk of these Xi Putin games. Eileen Gu, she is up. If you're watching this now live, I'm live streaming this at just before 2 p.m. Pacific. And you know, if I say we're up at 2 p.m. Pacific and you're checking your watch, you say, Emil, do you know it's like 1:50 p.m.? Yes, I'm giving you 10 extra minutes. 10 extra minutes from the bottom of my heart. It's like the lagniappe, as they say in the French Quarter, a little lagniappe for you. Eileen Gu. Eileen Gu. And so we're going to have GUI talk today. You can go to my column, Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund, aldef.org/blog. I write about this whole situation because it's significant. It's something that we need to talk about. Also going to talk about Peng Shui, who came out. She said she showed up. She said that she was retiring. And the two stories, Eileen Gu and Peng Shui, are not necessarily related. They're coincidental. But the stories say something about how free you actually are in China. And that's kind of how I'm approaching this story. Because I have nothing but, I want nothing but the best for Eileen Gu. I mean, God, I mean, she's young, she's smart. She has a kind of innocence now. But as I said, now she's winning. Now she's, supermodel. Just wait. And that's where the Peng Shui story comes in. So we'll talk about that. Also, we'll talk about Aquafina, because that's a big story. I saw it just this morning. It was hit over the weekend. She quit Twitter because she didn't like the trolls, because people said that she was like using a black scent. Like, I didn't know that was a thing. Well, they should talk to white athletes. Like Chris Mullen used to have a black scent. His black scent was pretty bad. You talk to white athletes who play in black environments like the NBA and see how they talk. Is that appropriation, or is that just, hey, this is my environment? I've got some things to mention about that, because I grew up in an area that was essentially, I went to a black junior high. I went to Everett Junior High, and I know that it crept into it was just who I was. I'm in that environment. This is the black flavor of me. And I just hate the fact that people now are pointing fingers and saying, appropriation. You got to look at intent. Anyway, I'm going to defend Aquafina. Defending Aquafina today on this show. But first, before we do, this is, as I say, it's the micro talk show, the AAPI and the AAXs. Emil Amok, the takeout, because we're still taking out. We're not like eating indoor. Well, some of us may be, but not me. Still the takeout. I asked a question, WDAAAT, what does an Asian American think? Because indeed, what does an Asian American think? They don't ask us. They don't ask us what we think. So, hey, this is the Micro Talk Show. The AAPI, the AAXs, the Asian American AACH, Chinese. Huck. What would the what would the goose be? They would just be. They wouldn't be Asian American. Or she says she's Chinese. When she's in America, she's American. When in China, she's in China. Wow. That is some freedom. She must have cut some. Well, look, we'll talk about that. Also, this is a show for the ALLs, all the rest of you, because you don't have to be Asian American or Asian to get what we're talking about. Before we get to the 2 o'clock hour, I just like to quickly scan the news just to make sure that nothing is happening that I don't know about. Here's something interesting. Bill McKibben has a picture of Neil Young. And this is in the New York Times. He says, "Call it codger power. We're older but fighting for a better America." Ah, codger power. This is, I was trying to think of, well, what would be the word for people who are older boomers, not maybe as boomed out as Clinton, because he's a boomer, but some of the younger boomers, like myself, who could be an X, but we're kind of boomerks. Would that be an ex-boomer? No, we're too far from the X's and too far from the boomers. We're kind of like in our own little thing. But codger power. Now, see, McKibben in the New York Times is writing about Neil Young. But Neil Young, he's in his 70s. I think it's just a general thing for older person who's not a millennial, not an Xer, the codgers. That's not a bad term. Maybe, hopefully it sticks. I definitely like codger better than fogey. Fogey is I don't know. It doesn't codger. That sounds, it has teeth. Fogey sounds like you might have false teeth. Codger. I like codger. Oh, codger. Actually, I prefer geezer because geezers do it with gas, as I like to say. So Bill McKibben says, call it codger power. We're older but fighting for a better America. Well, maybe. Look, a lot of people are getting on the Spotify thing and they're railing out against the artists like Neil Young and all the artists who are saying, yeah, I'm going to pull my stuff from Spotify. Look, this is not censorship. Don't call it censor. It is not censorship. What it is market movement. It's voting with your dollars. Nothing wrong with that. And codgers have, there are rich codgers and then there are the codgers who have an IRA. They got a 401k. They're not wealthy. They're just, okay, I did my time. And they do want a better America. And if they have some spendable cash, well, then they can vote with their dollars. That's what you do in capitalism, right? It's not about censorship. Neil Young isn't censoring anyway. But here's the thing about what I find interesting about Spotify. Spotify is defending Neil Young, and they say, "Hey, look, we're sticking with Neil Young because if we don't, we go down that slippery slope." Here's an idea, Spotify: hire some other voices besides Neil Young or besides Joe Rogan. Hire other different voices. That's, you don't double down on Joe Rogan and stand by him. You say, look, we're standing by Joe Rogan by allowing Emil Guillermo to be on Spotify. Actually, the PETA podcast is on Spotify. I think Emil Muck's Takeout's on Spotify. But it's not about censorship. It's never been about censorship. Some other things in the news. Olympic news. Nathan Chen is going for it tonight. He says in the Washington Post, for Nathan Chen, the Olympics are no longer about fear. He's in Beijing for the joy. Maybe on ice, but where's the joy in a games that, you know, you're separate, you're isolated, there are no fans in the stand? I think maybe we ought to think about, well, look, I would have avoided the games, but you know, there are athletes who are saying, hey, we've been training, it's our turn. Yeah, I'm sorry, but anyway. So so too bad for Nathan Chen, too bad also for Vincent Joe. He's out. He got COVID. He's going to miss the competition. It's sad because, well, he won a medal in the team event, but he's just not going to. I mean, COVID got him, but he's optimistic. He's coming back, he says, and you know, it's sad. You know, you work so hard, and this is why you go through the lengths that you do to make sure the games are held, to make sure you don't get COVID, and he gets COVID. Anyway, rooting for Vincent Joe to come back at some point. Now, before we get to the main topic about Eileen Gu, criticism for Zhu Yi. A lot of these stories have to do with Asian Americans. Vincent Joe of the U.S., skating for the U.S. Here's Zhu Yi, U.S.-born skater from Encino, I believe. She fell over the weekend. And boy, the internet was so harsh toward her. And that's the thing about going from your country, the U.S., to search for gold, and you know, you cut your deal, you make your decision. This is what you do for your sport, for you. But boy, Zhu Yi, she's a figure skater. She did her thing. She fell. It wasn't terrible, but boy, she got it on the on Twitter. People called her a disgrace. But if you're a public figure, and I guess they're putting them out there as public figures, you got to deal with it. Anyway, she could now, and this is the reason why a lot of people go and join the Olympic teams of their ancestral heritage, the countries of their ancestral heritage, is because they get shut out of their own teams. Out of, you know, if you're in the U.S. and you don't make the U.S. team, well, all right, here's the option. That's always been the case. I mean, for as long as I can remember, I had a friend in the 80s who did that from the Philippines. He's an American, was able to qualify for the Philippine team in luge, believe it or not. He was a Philippine luger, and he lived down in the peninsula, the Bay Area. He didn't win, but that wasn't his thing. His thing was just to be at the Olympics. And it's totally different now when you talk about Eileen Gu. Eileen Gu. Let's talk about Eileen Gu. You can go to my ALDEF column at aaldef.org. Let me get it up here. aaldef.org/blog. Incidentally, I'm wearing my red envelope outfit. It's still the Lunar New Year. And I had dumplings. I had pot stickers, I guess you call them. Vegan pot stickers. They were delicious. They're fun to make. You get the bamboo steamer and you fold them up and you make them all nice and you fold the triangles and I love it. So I'm the red envelope today. See, and I got like a little red envelope zipper here. Happy Lunar New Year to all you folks. I mean, this is the thing about the Olympics. The Olympics is the Lunar New Year treat. And incidentally, you can go to my Emil columns at aldf.org/blog. I wrote about the Uyghurs last week. If you don't know the Uyghurs, read my column. Get to know the Uyghurs. Get to know the facts. Get to know that up to 3 million people have been put in re-education camps there in the northwest portion of China. And after they spend their time in the re-education camps, they are then placed into forced labor. Some people would say that's tantamount to slavery. But because Western companies are involved, companies like Google and Microsoft and Adidas, and there's a long list. And they make cotton from that area. So if you're wearing a made in China cotton t-shirt, chances are it was made by Uyghur forced labor. Now, I'm not trying to say there should be a purity test, but I think people should know that this kind of stuff is happening. This is why there are human rights violations or human rights concerns with China and why the U.S. is not there. Why? Well, U.S. athletes are there, but Joe Biden is not there. The diplomats are holding a boycott. There's a diplomatic boycott against the Olympics. That's why these are the Xi Putin games, because they wanted to gang up on the country not there, or the lack of a diplomatic presence of the United States. And so I noticed in the news, the lowest ratings of any kind of opening ceremony in at least in recent years, but the ratings aren't there. And you got to wonder about NBC, because NBC is all over this thing. But if people are kind of turned off, that's going to make it tough. I mean, this is what makes these games these are the capitalist games. People are making money. The IOC is making money. China is making money. And that brings us to the person who I think is the face of the games, and that's the face of the games for Asian Americans. And that's Eileen Gu. I mean, if you don't know who Eileen Gu is, well, she is a freestyle skier. If you don't know freestyle skier, sometimes they have poles, sometimes they don't have poles, and they go out there and they're twisting and flipping around multiple 360s, maybe up a 360, 720, 10, 360, 720, 1080. They go up to 1400 something. I mean, they do these outrageous stunts. They're tricks. They used to be called hot dogging. But in the modern day, this is revitalized skiing, because now it just wasn't just the snowboarders who were doing all those X Games things. It was the skiers. And now it's Eileen Gu who's applying her aerial tricks to the geopolitical nature of these Xi Putin games. And I call it Gu's Olympic blur, because you see her and she's like twirling where you've got to stop it in slow motion to appreciate what she's doing. Like she's up there literally trying to reach with one hand, the left hand, to grab her right ski, and sometimes it's two hands on the right ski, and it helps to give her that force to turn in the air. And then in seconds, after numerous twists, she lands on both skis and skids to the base of the mountain. And I say, if she can keep doing that, power to her. Maybe she could stay above it all if she could keep doing that. But who knows for sure, right? This is the thing. Who knows for sure? But Eileen Gu is getting attention because she brings a new twist to the frequent question that all Asian Americans get. You know, where are you from? You know that question. Where are you from? Which is usually followed by the probing follow up. Where are you really from? And for Eileen Gu, just 18 years old, it's complicated by choice. And I call it the Olympic blur. Because the facts are, Eileen Gu is born and raised in San Francisco, right? Gu is what I call the essentially the constitutional daughter of Wong Kim Ark. If you don't know who Wong Kim Ark is, he's the Chinese American born in America in the 19th century. He was the poster child of the 14th Amendment and birthright citizenship because it was Wong Kim Ark who was part of that 1898 case that determined that if you're born in the U.S. on U.S. soil, you are without a doubt an American citizen. Yeah. Yet Gu's mother, Yan Gu, calls the shots for Eileen Gu. And Yan was born in China, came to the U.S. to study at Auburn. Hey, oddly enough, that's where Suni Lee is like kicking butt in gymnastics right now. And then she went to New York and ultimately to Stanford Business School. And at some point, she met Eileen Gu's father, who is sometimes referred to in news stories as a white male who attended Harvard. I mean, which I think is odd, but it shows they have either good academic taste or I don't know, not necessarily good taste in a mate because they're not together. It never really talks about their status. It just says that Yan Gu is a single mom who, after business school, became a venture capitalist, specializing in China and U.S. investments. And that was the thing. That was the thing. If you went to business school and you were Asian, I know this because I have friends who did this very thing, and they were Harvard College and MBA or law and MBA, and they went out there. They were the bridge between the East and the West. Dunkin' Donuts wants to go into to China. McDonald's, Kentucky Fried Chicken, you name it, all the companies. They opened their eyes and said, China, it's a market. And I imagine that Yangu was just part of that trend. Not just at fast food, but all businesses. Once China opened up, the whole thing. And this was Republicans and Democrats and business people. China was money. So Yangu has been successful enough to raise her daughter in the exclusive Seacliff area of San Francisco, which is where Robin Williams used to live, and a lot of rich people live in Seacliff. It's a great area right there by the Legion of Honor, right there by Land's End. And I used to live on, as a kid, I grew up in the Mission, but later on we moved out to the Richmond, and we used to walk out there by Land's End. It was beautiful. You can see the Golden Gate Bridge. You can see it's just a lovely area. And these stately houses, Seacliff. Yeah, that's where Yangu lived. And that's where she raised Eileen Gu. And Eileen Gu was sent to a private high school, University High. It's only $57,000 a year. I mean, it sort of prepares you for Harvard just to keep paying, keep sending those checks, right? It's like the pre-Harvard or the pre-Stanford. And Eileen was good enough to score 1580. This is reported, 1580 on her SATs. It earned her admission to Stanford. I mean, we're talking about a budding model minority here, And in fact, the younger Gu put all that on hold last year so she could travel the world because she was an international model, fashion model, and a freestyle skier. Now, I say international model because if you've seen pictures of Eileen Gu, she is. I'm not the first to say she's drop dead gorgeous. I don't say it as a sexist thing. That's what's been reported in that darn sexist media out there. But she is. She's good looking. And look, as an Asian American, Filipino, Asian American Filipino, who has look, I have a Caucasian wife. We make biracial babies. That's the one thing I can say about them. I can't talk about my kids and all their other gifts, but man, they are beautiful. That's just the case for all biracial babies. They're just pretty kids. Eileen Gu, no exception. So she spent most of her time as an international model. She's got these big contracts with Tiffany, with Louis Vuitton. She's also a freestyle skier, which means she says, hey, hold on, hold the camera. I've got to go hot dogging down the mountain. Hot dogging is what they used to call a show off skier. Freestyle is a nice way to call what they used to call a hot dogger. Now it's a modern skill because the snowboarders, the younger generation, have, taken over the mountain, right? I mean, if you've been skiing, like there's the skiers and there's the snowboarders. I haven't been skiing now in about 20 years, maybe even longer. But I was skiing when there was no snowboarding. There was just one, when you're bored, just go and hit the lodge, buy a drink. But now it's, snowboarders and all the tricks and the half pipe and all that. Gu does all that on skis. And she's considered the best in the world in what they call the freestyle half pipe, which is literally half a pipe. And I'm saying, wow, I guess, well, if you got half a pipe, then you can take the top half of the pipe and you can use it somewhere else. You never waste anything these days. I mean, that's just me. I see the half pipe and I say, what happened to the whole pipe? Okay. She's getting the half pipe and slope style where you go down a slope and then she's a favorite for the gold, but not for her country, but for her mother's country, right? Because Gu Eiling is the Asian American competing for China. Now, this is what my first thoughts when I heard this. I thought, well, okay, this is not a big deal because it's happened before, right? Like I said, my friend, the Filipino, was the loser. He was a wealthy lawyer in the 1980s. And he was just doing it for kicks. He was a tourist fond of Olympic rings, right? I mean, usually if you didn't make it on your team, your home team, when your country's dance card was filled, you found a way through your ethnic heritage. And thank goodness your mom, right? Your mom might and make you eligible. For the Philippines this year, Asa Miller, 22-year-old, downhill skier. I think you see what Gu does, like flying all over the place. You see a downhill skier. Well, what do? They just go down fast. Zoop. But now Gu's like spends some time there and hangs around. That's kind of like an arty thing. But Asa Miller, born in Portland, Oregon, skiing for the Philippines. Imagine that. He barely qualified for the event, but he's got a mother who helped him qualify, not for the U.S. team, but for the Philippines. And that's the way it usually is, except it's different with Eileen Gu. Eileen Gu or Gu Eileen, Eileen Gu. Look, I went back to some tapes. I saw the Toyota U.S. Grand Prix where Gu pretty much went up against the best in the world. And I saw the free ski half pipe, the free ski, freestyle, same word, half pipe. By the end, she was 5 points ahead of her closest rival, a full 10 points ahead of any Americans. She could win this event, the free ski half pipe. She could win the slope style. The one where she's not as strong is the one that she is doing tonight, big air. And if you saw her over the weekend, she did big air. She was good in the first run. You do 3 runs. You take the best of the 2 best of the 3. and combined, and they take the top 12. Eileen Gu aced the first one. The second one, she fell. And, okay, you got one to waste, but it puts pressure on the third. The third she aced. She finished fifth out of 12. So she's going to be in the finals tonight. There was some talk about, was it the wind? What was going on? Because a lot of there's some really good skiers who had trouble yesterday. But what was interesting is Eileen Gu, one of the things that she talks about is being a woman or a female athlete and having female athletes to look up to. And how when she was younger, and her mom was like a ski instructor, I believe, at Lake Tahoe for a while. And she would, Eileen Gu would do her thing and she'd hang out and she'd see it was mostly boys. It was mostly a guy's thing. And so she'd try to wear baggy clothes and she had no female role models. But one female role model was Maggie Voisin, an American team member. Maggie Voisin finished 15th yesterday, which is kind of sad because here's the mentee overtaking the mentor. I don't know if they really actually mentored or if she mentored her, but Eileen Gu did mention Maggie Voisin in a couple of interviews that I looked at. Maggie Voisin was 15th yesterday in the qualifying round, and Gu was finished 5th to qualify. They take the 12. Only one American got in there. 2 Americans finished 14th and 15th. And so that could have been an extra chance for the U.S. Instead, it's a chance for China, and a good chance for China to win the gold. So here we are. We got this situation. She could have skied for the American team, but not if her tiger mom has a say. And I guess Yang Gu is kind of tiger momish in a way. I mean, she won't talk to the media. She has all these conditions. The New York Times tried to talk to her. She said she will only talk if there are no questions about politics and she gets final review of the piece. Now, no self-respecting media org would do that. But, that's the thing. Yang Gu does it because she doesn't want to go on the record, because no one is going to mess with her sweet deal that she set up with China for her daughter as the winter sports sensation of Asia, if not the entire world. Here's what the Washington Post reported. China normally requires its nationals to give up, their passports. The implication is that Eileen Gu has renounced her American citizenship to skate for China. But the Post checked, and Eileen Gu's name does not appear on the list of Americans who have renounced their citizenship. Maybe it's because they want to have it both ways for as long as they want it. And who can really, question that? Hey, Yang Gu and Eileen Gu have it really good. She's going to protect her right to have it really good for as long as she can. And she's not answering any questions about her daughter's passport. And yet, I think a little transparency might not be a bad thing. Of course, maybe none of it's a problem if Eileen Gu just keeps delivering that gold medal style. And in less than an hour, as I talk, we'll see if she finishes at the top of the 12-person final in big air Big Air is kind of funny. I mean, she in the research I was doing, she was not listed as that was not one of the three that was her best, but she had the potential of medaling, of getting three golds in these three events. So Big Air is tonight. The ones the one that she's really dangerous in is the half pipe. And also in uh the downslope, slope style. But it's fascinating. I find it fascinating to watch Eileen Gu do her thing. If she keeps delivering that gold medal style, then she'll keep up with China will love her. China's big on developing alliances. We've heard people speak about China is using these Olympics to try to instill a kind of athleticism among its youth, among its people. They're developing alliances with the NBA and clearly now with the IOC. And in Eileen Gu, you have a country that has, you know, a freestyle skiing superstar who gives modern China this model of excellence to call their own. She's just what President Xi ordered, right? But before you think that, hey, okay, it's all just innocent, it's kind of fun, think about the Olympic blur again because it goes beyond sports. I mean, some Americans may be wondering about Gu's loyalty. Oh, she goes both ways. She's a switch hitter in a way, right? But does it mean Americans who wonder about Gu's loyalty will soon be wondering about the loyalty of all Asian Americans? I mean, this is kind of the important thing that we should watch for. I mean, there's fun. Yeah, we can have fun with Eileen Gu. Yeah, she could have been. She's the American who's skiing for the Chinese. She could medal for the Americans. She's going to medal for the China. She's going to reap the benefits there. Okay, her choice. But there are some real things that we should be concerned about. Like, here's the unfortunate coincidence. Last week, I mentioned this. NBC News did an exclusive with FBI Director Christopher Wray, and he was talking about the rise of Chinese espionage in technology and corporate trade secrets. And he said there's a new China related counterintelligence investigation every 12 hours. He said there were over 2,000 of those investigations. And he said that the fear of China is real. He says, quote, there is no country that presents a broader, more severe threat to our innovation, our ideas, our economic security than China does. Now, of course, he's quick to distinguish. There's a difference between people of Chinese heritage, people of Chinese descent here and there, and the real culprits. It's always the Chinese government, the bureaucracy, the Chinese Communist Party. But the question had to be asked, and it was. NBC asked, what could all that mean for Asian Americans, specifically for Chinese Americans? And Ray said, quote, we don't investigate anyone based on race, ethnicity, or constitutionally protected activity. We could be safe. But then he said, in fact, many of the cases, Chinese Americans are some of the people most victimized by the Chinese government's tactics. And it sounds like he means that some of the Chinese Americans' loyalties may have been manipulated by China's corporate spies who try to play a loyalty thing, leverage loyalty to get at something. That's what it sounds like. Think about that. But trade secrets are one thing. Now you got to wonder, what about the the homegrown, the homegrown Olympic medalists that we have? I mean, that's better than software. We're not talking about AI secrets. We're talking about real life human beings, right? Which brings us back to the willingness of Yan Gu, the mother of Eileen Gu. I mean, look, there's no doubt the biracial Asian American is being used by China. How exactly only Yan Gu, Eileen's mother, knows for sure. Maybe it's all positive. Let's hope. Let's hope it's all positive. In the same way that, is it bad that, McDonald's wants to have a franchise over there and franchises in China? I mean, it's business, right? So maybe it's just all positive. Eileen's the perfect athlete, ambassador Xi, the athletic ambassador that President Xi and the Chinese government want her to be. Fresh-faced innocence. Really, Eileen Gu could be the modern Olympic bridge, right? East and west. And, we're all inner beings, right? Like Thich Nhat Hanh, when he died, he's always the meditator. He always talked about we're all one. That's sort of the ultimate message. We're not frenemies. We're just all one people. And then, so we think that. We're trying to be high-minded and think that. But China is also known to be ruthless. I mean, look at tennis star Peng Shuai. And this is a story that broke just today, the Peng Shuai story. And she announced in an interview with the French media, she says, she's retiring. And she also mentioned that there was a huge, quote, huge misunderstanding when she publicly accused a retired senior Chinese official of pressuring her into sex. And she was talking to the French sports outlet L'Equipe. Here's Peng, 36 years old, announcing her retirement. And she said, she wrote something on Weibo, right? She said, this post has given rise to a huge misunderstanding from the outside world. I hope that we no longer distort the meaning of this post. This is where she posted in November about she had a sexual relationship with a powerful former vice premier, Zhang Gaoli. She says, I hope that we no longer distort the meaning of this post. I also hope that we don't add more hype on this. She said, I never said anyone had sexually assaulted me in any way. Since the post, she said, my life has been what it's supposed to be, nothing special. Don't cry for me, world. I'm fine. And how many of you really think that she did that on her own volition? This is the thing with China. You don't know. She says, my sentimental problems, my private life should not be involved in sports and politics. So, what does this mean? The coincidence of this. You have the world's media coming to Beijing. Everyone's asking about Peng Shuai, saying, where is she? We know about this relationship with this 75-year-old guy, and after this guy Zhang's retirement, Peng Shuai wrote that Zhang invited her to his home, pressured her to resume a sexual relationship. Initially, she cried, rejected the advance, and then later relented. Apparently, they continued to see each other in secret until she posted that Weibo post in November. And then Zhang cut off contact after the argument. This is China's Me Too, right? So I don't know if what this means, but it doesn't strike me as totally transparent. It strikes me as more Chinese show business. And it strikes me that if you're a woman in sports, you just play the game or else. So Peng Shui is really the most recent example of women being bullied by the Chinese government. But then again, look, it doesn't matter how famous you are, how good you are. Chloe Zhao, the Oscar winning filmmaker, castigated for making remarks that were seen as disparaging by Chinese officials. And then, of course, we have the Uyghurs, all 3 million of them who've been through those re education camps. I talked about them in a previous column on the Aldiff blog. I mean, there are Uyghur Americans who have not been able to contact their relatives still to this day, some of whom probably have been in re education camps since 2017, or they are now in forced labor, but they are not permitted to communicate with their family members who have been able to get to the West. This is China. You play with China, you give them money, you reward them, you play their game. And you know, Yan Gu should know her father was high up in the Chinese government. I believe he was an electrical engineer. But now she lives with her mother and Eileen Gu in Seacliff, and it's unclear, like I said, what kind of deal that's been cut that allows Eileen Gu or gives her the special privilege of keeping her American passport because it's not on the list of people who've renounced their citizenship. Eileen Gu and her mom, her family, I think they just have to tread carefully, right? Hey, they're just the ones who promote youth sports in China, then sign lucrative deals in the US with companies, US companies that want to do business with China. Hey, the Gus are just playing both countries to their advantage. I mean, it's really no different from any other Fortune 500 company or franchise offering wanting to do business in Beijing. And maybe it is. But Gu's got to keep being a symbol of Olympic gold, or maybe just gold, if she wants to keep at it. I mean, I think the Peng Shui, the tennis star story is just coincidental, but it's good that it comes up now because we see what happens when you fall from grace or you have a little freedom or you express a little freedom. You see what happens when you're at odds with the Chinese government. Peng Shui says she wasn't a victim of sexual assault. Misunderstanding. Everything's fine. Let's see what happens to Peng Shui after all those French interviews she's giving today. So I think for Eileen Gu, look, I like Eileen Gu. She's a San Franciscan like me. One of the shows we're showing her in her Miss Burke's sailor outfit. You know, Miss Burke's school here in San Francisco for rich, well, for prominent families. They send their kids to Burke's or to Hamlin's, and I always favored the Burke's girls because the school, their elementary school, is around the corner from my house, and I'd see them in their little sailor outfits, and then later on in high school, I knew some Burke's girls. I dated one, and you know, so I have a soft spot. So they showed a clip of Eileen Gu talking how about Title IX and about women in sports and athletics, and great speech, the clips that they played. So I'm rooting for her. She's just so young right now at 18. Kind of reminds me of almost like Brooke Shields and her mom, right? I almost said Elvis and Colonel Parker. But that kind of relationship, you got the Britney Spears and her father is probably a better, more recent example. Yan Gu, Tiger Mom, Eileen Gu, the spinning, twirling, whirling freestyle skier. If she can keep doing her 900-degree twists and turns in the air, she's fine. In the air. But once she lands, all bets are off. I'm telling you. I mean, Eileen Gu likes to give that pat answer that she's American when she's in America, and she's Chinese when she's in China. But there's nothing like, I mean, she's playing both sides, right? And she may think she can play both sides when she feels like it, but you're dealing with China. You're never quite as free as you think. Not as free as you are on an Olympic run when you're upside down in the air, looking at your skis. That's freedom. And recent history shows you can't aspire to be that free in China. So I'm rooting for her. I'm rooting for our gal Eileen Gu. I mean, we have the same initials. She's an EG. I'm an EG. We're both from San Francisco. So I hope she does well in the big air. Not the big hair, the big air final today. The big air final. And look, I say you're never quite as free in China as you think you are. And leave it to our friend of the show, our friend Nicholas, who says, never quite as free as you think in America. Well, that's true. That's true. This is one of the things about, this situation. That's why I'm not ragging on Eileen Gu. I like her. I hope she wins all the medals she can. I'm rooting for her. But I also know that as long as you're dealing with China, you don't really know where you stand until you're on the other side, right? Ask Peng Shui that. And look at the Uyghurs, or excuse me, the Uyghurs. The Uyghurs. Oh, is that related to Bob Euchre? Oh, he's a Euchre, not a Uyghur. All right. Coming up at, I believe, in the 3 o'clock hour, the freestyle skiing is going to be starting. So look, we're going to end the show here. We're going to come back tomorrow and talk about Aquafina, because Aquafina is a big star now, Nora Olymp, and I saw her in the big Disney Shang-Chi, you know the one where she's on the bus, and the big hit. She was in that. She was in Crazy Rich Asians. She's happening. She's getting her card stamped. She is bona fide now. And I don't know, people, she must be responding to trolls who are coming at her. So we'll talk about Aquafina tomorrow, because we're coming up to We're coming up to a time. Here's the thing. Nicholas says, Uyghurs are the African Americans of China. That is a comparison topic. You know, I've wondered about that. And people, if they don't know the Uyghurs, oh, good show. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you for saying that, Nicholas. A lot of people don't know the Uyghurs. There was a Washington Post editorial over the weekend that just put it into perspective. I saw something on YouTube that talked about how Uyghurs who are here in America trying to teach the Uyghur language, trying to let people know what's going on. And they had her dial up her relatives in China. They kept getting kept getting a recording saying, you know, this number is disconnected, you know, no one is here. And that was the video was about a couple years old. Apparently it's still that way because the Uyghur who was writing, the Uyghur American who was a scientist, was writing the Washington Post, said, yeah, where's my family? I don't know. And in some ways I can relate because so many times I consider myself lucky, very lucky, for being able to come here to America. My father came to America, as I often say. He came here in the 1920s. And why he was able to come here and not his other brothers and not his other sisters. He was the oldest. He came. He brought a brother. The two of them were here. And this was their opportunity as colonized Americans, because they were born under the flag, under the American flag. Philippine-American War. And the Philippines, oddly enough, today is the 7th, but it was on the 6th that the U.S. Senate voted for the annexation of the Philippines by military force in 1899. So in 1898, they start the Philippine-American War, which is to take over the Philippines. By 1899, the Senate says, yeah, let's annex the Philippines. We're going to colonize these suckers. And my dad was born out of the rubble of the Philippine-American War. But he was a colonized American. He has a birthday tomorrow. Had he been alive, or were he alive? We'll talk about that history tomorrow. That and Aquafina. Oh, what a good show tomorrow. And we'll talk, of course, about what did Eileen do? What did Eileen do? I hope she did well. Really, I'm rooting for her. Eileen Gu. And like I said, I'm a proud father of 3 biracial Asian American mixed race kids. They're just pretty. They're just flat out pretty. You just can't help it. They're just, and she happens to be, Eileen Gu happens to be one of those. So look, I speak from experience. We just make good biracial babies. But Eileen Gu, man, 1580 SATs, plays the piano, spins around 1400, 360, 720, 900, 10. She's like, let's hope she does well today. It's not her best. If she doesn't, you just never know what's going to happen, right? On a given day. You show up. Are you calm? Are you relaxed? Let's hope she does well. Let's hope she does well. But then I think for the rest of the 10 days, there's the half pipe and then there's the slope style. Those are our main events. So we wish her well. Back again tomorrow. I'm Emil Guillermo. Hey, check us out. Follow us on Twitter at Emil Amok, where you can listen to this show if you use the old Periscope interface they got there. Check us out on amok.com. You can check out the replays. I post them there. Read more at ALDEF, the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund, the ALDEF blog. Yeah, like us, friend us, do what the algorithm says. Look, we're not trying to be CCP on you now. We're just saying, just do what the algorithm does or says to do. You know, yeah, please. And this is the Micro Talk Show of the API and the AXs, the ALLs for all the rest of you. Emil Mux check out WDAAAT. What does an Asian American think? Because they never ask. They should ask because we got a lot to say. Those of you who are regular listeners to the show, if you get this far into the show, this is where I get meditative. And I try to just support y'all and I say, look, this is where you come to make yourself feel good. If you ever have doubts, if you ever feel I'm not good enough, I don't know, you're enough. Put this hand here, put this hand, just give yourself a hug. You're okay. You're okay. The antidote to shame, self-love, the good kind, the good kind. And as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. And may you live with ease. Till tomorrow. I'm Emil Guillermo. Mahal